I used to think acting was mostly the art of making other people believe you had more courage than you actually owned, which was convenient because I had been borrowing courage from future versions of myself for years. My name was Choi I-han. I was 29 and Omega, and my apartment in Yeonam-dong was small enough that I could fry an egg, answer the front door, and bump my knee on the bed without taking more than 3 steps. I told people I was a freelance actor because that sounded cleaner than saying I spent half my week reading minor roles for audio dramas, 2 nights pouring drinks at a private karaoke lounge, and every other hour pretending not to be terrified of my aunt's medical bills. I was not tragic in any interesting way. I owned 3 good shirts, 1 suit that looked dignified if the lighting was kind, and a habit of smiling politely when wealthy people spoke to me as if poverty were a personality defect. My best friend, Han Yeri, said I smiled like someone hiding a knife in a napkin. I said knives were expensive and napkins were free. She worked at a costume warehouse in Sindong and believed in love with the same grim commitment that other people reserved for tax law. Her own relationship had ended 6 months earlier when her girlfriend chose a stable government worker over a woman who could identify silk weight by touch. Yeri said she respected the decision and hoped both of them stepped in puddles forever. That was the level of emotional health we were operating with when the offer came. It arrived through a casting broker who usually sent me jobs such as tired office worker in background, young uncle crying at funeral, or once, handsome stranger who holds an umbrella and says nothing. The message was short. Private client. 1 evening performance. High discretion. Payment same day. Role, former lover. I stared at the words while my kettle screamed on the hot plate, and I thought, former lover of whom exactly, because my face was not the sort people paid to display as proof of a scandal. I was decent-looking in a tired, careful way, with dark hair I cut myself when rent was due, a mouth that looked more stubborn than sweet, and eyes Yeri claimed were useful because they made me seem innocent right up until I opened my mouth. The fee was written at the bottom of the message. I turned off the kettle and read it twice. It was enough to cover my aunt's next hospital deposit and the private loan interest that had been circling me like a patient animal. Dignity is important, but hospitals do not accept dignity at the payment desk, so I wrote back asking for details. The details arrived in a black car. That sounds more dramatic than it felt at first. Seoul has many black cars, and most of them contain either executives, exhausted fathers, or people who have learned not to answer questions. This one arrived outside the karaoke lounge at 2 in the afternoon, glossy and silent, while I stood beneath a sign shaped like a pink microphone and tried to look like a man who had not spent the morning arguing with a pharmacist over insurance coverage. The driver knew my name. He opened the back door without smiling. Inside sat a woman in a gray suit with hair cut so precisely it looked contractual. She introduced herself as Director Na Hye-rin of Seoryun Holdings and placed a tablet on her knee as if it were a weapon. "You have experience improvising under pressure," she said. "I have experience being underpaid under pressure," I answered, then regretted it because rich people rarely appreciated accuracy when it was delivered before coffee. Director Na's mouth moved a fraction. "The client values composure." Then the client should hire a statue. A statue cannot answer hostile questions. A statue also does not sign non-disclosure agreements. You will. I liked her more than I wanted to. She explained that I would attend a private charity preview at the Lumeria Hotel under the identity of a man who had once been involved with Kwon Tae-oh, chief executive of Seoryun Holdings and eldest son of the Kwon family, whose legitimate businesses included logistics, hotels, construction, shipping, and enough charitable foundations to make prosecutors cautious. Director Na did not say criminal organization. She did not have to. Certain names in Seoul gathered silence around them. The Kwon family did not appear in entertainment news often, and when they did, the articles were written with the careful politeness of reporters who wanted to keep using their fingers. Kwon Tae-oh, Alpha 34, controlled the public company, while his father controlled the older, darker network behind it. He had a current lover, an elegant Omega named Ryu Seon, whose family was trying to turn a private arrangement into a political marriage. The Kwon chairman approved of Ryu Seon because he came with ports, warehouses, and a mother who knew how to threaten people over tea. Tae-oh apparently needed to embarrass him without starting a war. My role was to appear, let people assume history, and create enough uncertainty that Ryu Seon would overplay his hand. "So you want me to be bait," I said. Director Na looked out the window. "We want you to be a memory. A fake one. Most useful memories are edited." I should have refused. There are moments in life when a person can still choose the less dangerous road, and I have almost always recognized those moments while walking directly past them. But then, Director Na showed me the contract, and the fee had doubled. The first payment would transfer before the event. The second would transfer after I completed the evening without exposing the arrangement. A separate clause promised legal assistance for any public defamation connected to the role. Another offered an advance against future work if the client required additional appearances. I read every line. I did not have a law degree, but debt gives a person a sharp education in the language of traps. The contract did not ask for intimacy. It did not ask me to touch anyone. It asked for presence, conversation, and discretion. My fake history with Kwon Tae-oh would be vague. We had met abroad. We had ended quietly. We had remained personally significant enough that seeing me again might be uncomfortable for his current lover. It was absurd, almost elegant in its cruelty. "Why me?" I asked. Director Na paused too long. "Mr. Kwon selected you after reviewing several candidates." That is not comforting. It was not meant to be. Has he seen me act? Yes. I tried to remember which role could possibly have reached a mafia CEO, funeral nephew, umbrella stranger, voice of the tired prince in episode 6 of a web drama no one watched. Director Na did not explain. She only handed me a pen. I thought of my aunt, who had raised me after my parents died and still apologized every time I paid for her medicine, as though survival were an inconvenience she had invented. I thought of Yeri sewing cuffs until dawn because rent did not care about heartbreak. I thought of the small restaurant downstairs that let me take unsold rice at closing and never called it charity. Then I signed my name. The pen was heavy. Rich people even made surrender feel expensive. Yeri took the news with the calm of a woman who had once stitched an entire hanbok sleeve while trapped in an elevator. "You agreed to pretend you used to date a mafia CEO. You make it sound irresponsible." It is irresponsible. It pays irresponsibly well. She sat cross-legged on the floor of her studio, surrounded by garment bags and half a dozen suits waiting to become someone else's lies. Is he handsome? That is not relevant. In this genre of mistake, it is almost always relevant. I have not met him. That makes it worse. You are entering a fake romantic history with a man whose face you do not know. I know his face. Director Na sent a briefing file. And? I remembered the photograph. Kwon Tae-oh standing at a shareholders' meeting. Black suit, black hair brushed back. Expression so controlled it seemed the room had been arranged around his refusal to react. He was handsome in the severe way expensive knives are beautiful. He looks like he could fire someone for breathing emotionally. Yeri made a satisfied noise. Terrible. You will fall in love. I am doing one evening of work. You said the same before that radio drama where you cried about a ghost prince for 3 weeks. The ghost prince deserved justice. and you deserve therapy." She softened then, because teasing was how we approached fear without letting it win. "I-han, be careful. Men like that do not create fake scandals because their lives are stable. Men like that do not notice people like me unless they need a prop. Props get broken." I looked at her sewing machine, at the cup of instant coffee gone cold beside it, at the fact that both of us had become experts at turning worry into jokes because the alternative was admitting how little protection we had. "I'll be careful," I said. She did not believe me. I did not fully believe myself. The Lumeria Hotel looked as if someone had taken a palace, removed anything human, and replaced it with mirrors. I arrived through the staff entrance because that was where hired memories belonged. A stylist met me in a preparation room and put me into a midnight blue suit that fit better than anything I owned. It made me look taller, cleaner, almost like a version of myself who had never counted coins at a pharmacy. Director Na reviewed the plan while a makeup artist brushed powder along my jaw. I would enter at 8:40 after Kwon Tae-oh's speech and before Ryu Seon's family announcement. I would approach the West Gallery. If spoken to, I would answer politely. If asked about my connection to Tae-oh, I would say, "We knew each other before his world became so crowded." I disliked the line immediately. That sounds like something a dying count says in a historical drama. Director Na did not blink. It tested well. "With whom? Ghosts?" The makeup artist's hand trembled with suppressed laughter. Director Na ignored us both. "Mr. Kwon will acknowledge you. Do not initiate physical contact. Do not reveal financial motive. Do not allow Ryu Seon to isolate you. What happens if he tries? Security will intervene. And if security belongs to him?" For the first time, Director Na looked at me with something like approval. "Then you leave by the service corridor behind the East Gallery." She handed me a small silver cufflink. "Press this twice if you require extraction." "Extraction?" I repeated. "Such a romantic evening." "It is not romance, Mr. Choi." That is what I keep telling myself. I met Kwon Tae-oh 7 minutes before I became his former lover. He entered the preparation room without announcement, and every person inside straightened as if a string had been pulled through their spines. I had seen his face in photographs, but photographs had not captured the quiet pressure of him. Some people enter a room asking to be noticed. Tae-oh entered as if the room had already made the correct decision. He wore a black suit with no visible ornament except a watch thin enough to cost more than my apartment deposit. His hair was dark, his eyes colder than the lighting, and his expression gave away so little that I immediately distrusted it. Control like that was never natural. It was built, usually over something painful. "Choi I-han," he said. His voice was low and even, the sort of voice that made people stop interrupting out of self-preservation. "Kwon Tae-oh," I replied, because when nervous I became either too polite or too stupid, and there was no time to choose. Director Na's mouth tightened. Tae-oh looked at me for a moment. "You read the contract?" "Twice." "Questions?" "Several, but most would make your director dislike me more than she already does." Director Na said, "I have no personal opinion." "That sounds lonely," I said. Tae-oh's eyes moved, not quite amusement, but something shifted. "You understand that this may become unpleasant. I have worked children's birthday parties for celebrity families. My definition of unpleasant is broad. Ryu Seon is dangerous. So are unpaid hospital bills." That earned silence, not sympathy, which I would have hated, but attention. Tae-oh studied me with the careful intensity of a man who had learned that every person contained either a weakness or a weapon. "If at any point you want to stop, tell Director Na." "Would you stop?" "Yes." "Even if it ruined your plan?" A plan that requires an unwilling person is a liability. It was a clean answer. Too clean, maybe. Still, I felt one small knot inside me loosen despite my better judgment. He turned toward the door. We enter separately. You do not belong to me tonight. Good, I said. I am very attached to not belonging to people. He paused with his hand near the handle. Remember that. Then he left, and the room seemed to exhale. At 8:40, I walked into a room full of people paid to recognize value and trained to mistake it for virtue. The charity preview was allegedly for youth arts education, though the necklaces in the room could have funded 3 schools and a small hospital. I moved through the West Gallery past white orchids, abstract paintings, and clusters of alphas who spoke in the calm voices of men deciding other people's weather. No one looked at me long at first. That was familiar. I was good at being unimportant until instructed otherwise. Then Kwon Tae-oh saw me from across the room. It was not dramatic. He did not freeze or reach for a glass. He simply stopped speaking in the middle of a sentence. The man beside him followed his gaze. Then another. Attention spreads among rich people like spilled ink, silently, quickly, staining everything it touches. I stood near a painting of a blue staircase and pretended I had not become the most interesting object in the gallery. Tae-oh approached with measured steps. Ryu Se-on stood beside him, beautiful in a pale suit, his smile arranged with surgical precision. "Mr. Choi," Tae-oh said, and the room leaned closer without moving. "I did not expect you." The line was simple, the effect was immediate. Ryu Se-on's eyes sharpened. I offered a small smile, the kind I had used in auditions when the director looked disappointed before I spoke. "I was invited by the foundation," I said. "I thought the evening was safe enough." Tae-oh's face remained unreadable, but something in his gaze acknowledged the phrase, "safe enough." We had our fake history now, built on 2 words and a room full of people hungry to misunderstand them. Ryu Se-on touched Tae-oh's sleeve. "You should introduce us." Tae-oh looked at his hand until Ryu removed it. "Ryu Se-on, Choi I-han." "And what are you to Tae-oh?" Ryu asked, sweetly enough to poison tea. I repeated the tested line because I was a professional, and also because Director Na might have hidden a tranquilizer dart in the orchids. We knew each other before his world became so crowded. The room went very quiet. Somewhere, Yeri would have been proud and horrified. Jealousy is not always loud. Sometimes it arrives as a smile held half a second too long. Ryu Se-on's smile became beautiful enough to frighten me. "How poetic," he said. "Tae-oh rarely mentions the past." "He rarely mentions lunch either," I replied before wisdom could stop me. "That does not mean it never happened." A woman near us coughed into her champagne. Tae-oh looked at the floor for one brief moment, and I suspected he was hiding an expression. Ryu's eyes flicked to me again, reassessing. In his mind, I had been meant to be bait, perhaps decorative, perhaps wounded. I had made the mistake of being a person. "Then you must join us," he said. "I would love to hear more." "No," Tae-oh said, not loudly. He did not need volume. The word landed with the weight of a locked door. Ryu turned slowly. "No? Mr. Choi is not here for your entertainment." The sentence was useful for the plan, I told myself. It established conflict. It provoked Ryu. It protected the role. It was not personal, but my body, inconsiderate and underpaid, understood the words before my mind finished filing them away. No one had said something like that for me in a room like that. I had defended myself plenty. I had made jokes, sharpened my mouth, survived insults by refusing to perform injury. Being protected without being made small was unfamiliar enough to feel suspicious. Ryu stepped closer to Tae-oh. Careful. People will think you still care. Let them think accurately, Tae-oh said. And that was the moment the plan escaped its leash. By 10 that night, 3 gossip accounts had posted blurred photos of me. By 11, Ryu Seon had cornered me beside the service corridor with 2 men who were too well dressed to be called bodyguards and too quiet to be called guests. I was holding a glass of water and trying to remember the exact location of the cufflink when Ryu said, "How much?" I looked at him. "For the water?" "For you." It was almost impressive, the casualness of it. Some insults come wearing gloves. I am not for sale. Everyone in this building is for sale. The only difference is whether they admit the price. Then you should appreciate honesty. I am expensive. His smile thinned. Tae-oh hired you. That means I can hire you better. I pressed my thumb against the cufflink once, not twice, warning myself, perhaps. You are making a generous assumption that I want to work for someone who opens negotiations by insulting the product. One of the men behind him moved. My skin went cold, but I kept my face calm. Omegas learn early that panic can be used against them. Ryu leaned close enough for his expensive cologne to fill the space between us. You think you matter because he looked at you. Tae-oh looks at problems before removing them. Then I must be safe, I said. You seem much more removable. His hand lifted toward my wrist. Before he touched me, Tae-oh's voice cut through the corridor. Move away from him. Ryu turned, eyes bright with fury. Tae-oh stood at the end of the hall, Director Na behind him and 3 security men behind her. His expression had not changed, but the air had. You are embarrassing yourself, Ryu said. No, Tae-oh replied. I am documenting you. Director Na lifted her phone. The men behind Ryu stepped back. It was clean, efficient, terrifying. Tae-oh did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply made the room understand that consequences had already begun. I expected the job to end after that. Bait had been taken. The current lover had become too jealous, too public, too reckless. I had performed my role and could return to my apartment with money in my account, and another strange story Yeri would forbid me from turning into a joke. Instead, at midnight, Kwon Tae-oh asked me to sit in a closed dining room while Director Na placed a new contract on the table. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and untouched food. Outside the windows, the Han River held the city lights in broken lines. My body had started shaking after the danger passed, which felt rude. I folded my hands beneath the table so no one would notice. Tae-oh noticed anyway. He slid a cup of warm tea toward me without comment. Again, not personal, I told myself. Observation, management. Ryu's family will retaliate, Director Na said. Against me? Against anyone useful. I was useful for one evening. That may be enough. I looked at Tae-oh. You said I did not belong to you tonight. You still do not. But? He tapped the contract once. There is a way to protect you and end the marriage pressure permanently. I did not need to read the title to understand. You want a fake marriage. A legal marriage, Director Na corrected, with private terms. That is what people say when fake becomes expensive. Tae-oh's mouth barely moved. You would receive debt clearance, medical support for your aunt, separate living quarters, legal protection, and a defined end date after 12 months unless both parties agree otherwise. And what do you receive? A spouse my father did not choose. He said it with such flatness that I heard the wound beneath it only afterward. And a scandal large enough that Ryu's family cannot reframe tonight. You could hire someone else. Not anymore. Because of the photos. Because I involved you. The words were quiet. I looked up. Tae-oh was watching the tea, not me. "I will not pretend this is generosity," he said. "It is strategy, but strategy can still include responsibility." That was the first honest thing he gave me, and honesty from a man like him felt more dangerous than any lie. I took the contract home instead of signing it. That was my first act of rebellion, and, considering the size of the security car outside my building, possibly my most theatrical. Yeri read the document while wearing pajama pants covered in cartoon radishes. "This is either the best trap I have ever seen or the strangest employee benefit package in Seoul. Helpful. He pays your aunt's hospital bills, clears the loan sharks, protects you from Ryu, gives you a private room, and lets you leave after a year. Yes. What does he forbid? Selling information, public relationships, unauthorized press contact, entering restricted floors, interfering in family operations, and emotional misinterpretation." Yeri looked up. "Emotional misinterpretation?" "Not in those words. But spiritually, yes." She leaned back against the wall. "Do you want to sign?" I hated that she asked gently. It would have been easier if she mocked me. "I want my aunt safe." "That is not what I asked." I looked around the apartment, at the ceiling stain shaped like a country no map had claimed, at the folded blanket near the heater, at the life I had defended fiercely despite how little it defended me back. "I want to stop being one accident away from disaster." Yeri nodded. "That is closer. I do not want to become someone's possession." "Then put it in the contract." "He already did." She blinked. I pointed to Clause 9. She read it aloud, slowly. "Both parties acknowledge that marriage under this agreement does not create ownership, sexual entitlement, medical authority beyond emergency consent, or restriction of personal autonomy." Her expression changed. "He wrote this?" Director Na said he insisted. Yeri stared at the page for a long time. "I still do not trust him." "Neither do I." "Good. Trust is expensive. Make him pay in installments." I signed the next morning at a law office above a bank in Gangnam, wearing my one good shirt and the calm expression of a man walking into a fire with a receipt. Tae-oh signed after me. His signature was sharp and illegible. Mine looked like someone trying not to apologize. There was no ceremony, no rings at first, no soft music or family blessing. Just paper, witnesses, and Director Na saying, "Congratulations," in the tone one uses for a successful dental extraction. Tae-oh drove me to Seoryun House himself, which I later learned he almost never did for anyone. The mansion stood behind stone walls in Pyeongchang-dong, elegant and severe, with pine trees that looked older than my entire bloodline. My room was on the second floor, far from his, with its own sitting area, bathroom, and balcony. It was larger than my apartment, and so quiet that my thoughts seemed impolite. Someone had placed a kettle on the side table, along with rice crackers, mild stomach medicine, and a new notebook. "Director Na?" I asked. Tae-oh looked at the notebook. "You write things down." "You have known me for less than 24 hours. You carried a notebook last night. You checked your left pocket 3 times whenever the room became crowded." "That is not knowing me. That is surveillance." "It is attention." "From your world, those may be cousins." He accepted that with a slight nod. "If it makes you uncomfortable, I will stop." I expected argument. I had prepared one. Instead, I stood there with all my sharp little words lined up and nowhere to send them. "It is fine," I said too quickly. "The crackers are a little ominous. You did not eat at the event." "I was busy being a memory." "Memories require glucose." I laughed before I could stop myself. It was not a big laugh. It was small, startled, and very inconvenient. Tae-oh looked at me as if I had placed something fragile in his hands. Living with a man who treated feelings like classified documents required patience, suspicion, and a strong appreciation for silence. The first week of our marriage was spent learning the geography of each other's boundaries. Tae-oh woke at 5. I woke at 7, unless anxiety got there first. He ate plain rice, grilled fish, and soup with the discipline of a monk preparing for corporate war. I liked toast burned at the edges and coffee sweet enough to qualify as a dessert crime. On the third morning, the kitchen contained both. I stared at the toaster. Tae-oh read reports at the end of the table. The staff asked your preference. The staff guessed coffee with condensed milk. I guessed. You guessed sugar with coffee attached. Was I wrong? No, that is the upsetting part. He turned a page. Noted. I tried not to smile into my cup. Our first real fight happened over my aunt's hospital room. Tae-oh's people moved her to a private suite without telling me, and she called crying because she thought she had died and been sent to a luxury afterlife with adjustable lighting. I found Tae-oh in his study and said, "You cannot rearrange my family like furniture." He looked up immediately. The previous room had mold. Then you tell me. You ask. You do not send men in suits to relocate an elderly woman who still thinks smartphones are government traps. It was medically necessary. Then communication was emotionally necessary. He absorbed that as if I had introduced a new category of risk. You are right, he said. The simplicity of it nearly ruined my anger. I am not finished being upset. Understood. Do not agree with me politely. It makes yelling difficult. Something near his eyes shifted. Would you like me to be unreasonable? No. Then continue. So I did. I told him about my aunt, about how people with money often called their decisions help because help sounded kinder than control. He listened. He did not defend himself again. That night he sent my aunt flowers with a handwritten apology that contained no excuses. She called me to say my husband had beautiful penmanship and a suspiciously cold voice. I told her both were true. The public version of our marriage developed faster than the private one. Photos of us leaving the law office circulated within days. Ryu Seon released a statement about betrayal, dignity, and manipulative outsiders, which was impressive coming from a man whose corridor conversation was now in the possession of 3 legal teams. Reporters camped outside Seoryun Holdings. Gossip programs speculated about my background, my family, my work, and whether I had secretly been Tae-oh's first love. Yeri sent me screenshots with helpful notes such as, "Your cheekbones are trending," and "Someone thinks you are a disguised Chaebol heir. Congratulations on your promotion." Tae-oh handled the noise by saying almost nothing. I handled it by reading comments until I hated humanity, then pretending I had not. One evening, he found me on the balcony with my phone in my hand and my shoulders around my ears. "Do not read them," he said. "Thank you. I had not considered that revolutionary strategy." He stood beside me, leaving a careful distance. "They are not writing about you." My name appears often for people not writing about me. They are writing about a version they can use. I looked at him. City light lined the side of his face. "Does that help you?" "No." "Then why say it?" "Because sometimes naming the blade does not stop the cut, but it tells you where to press." I looked down at my phone. A stranger had called me a social climber with a sad face. Another had said I looked too ordinary for a man like him. That one annoyed me most because it was unimaginative. "I am ordinary," I said. "No," Tae-oh replied. "You are specific." It was such a strange correction that I had no defense ready. Specific. Not special, not beautiful, not perfect. Specific. as if he had noticed the exact shape of me and found the word worth saying. Ryu Seon did not disappear. Men like him rarely vanished when bitterness gave them a stage. He sent flowers first, white lilies to Seoryeon House, the card blank except for my name. Tae-oh had them removed before I saw them, which started another argument because apparently we were collecting those. I am not a child, I said. I can see flowers without collapsing. They were not flowers. They had stems. They were a message. Then let me read my mail. He stood in the foyer, black coat still on, jaw tight. Ryu's family used lilies at funerals after internal punishments. That stopped me. The staff moved quietly around us, pretending not to listen. I folded my arms because I needed somewhere to put my hands. You still should have told me. Yes, he said it again, that infuriating yes. I am trying to protect you without reducing you. How is that going? Poorly. I laughed despite myself, and the sound broke something in the room. His shoulders lowered a fraction. I do not know how to do this, he said, almost too quietly. Which part? Let someone stand close to danger. I was in danger before you. Not because of me. Do not flatter yourself. My life was a mess with a full independent schedule. He looked at me then, and for a moment I saw the exhaustion beneath the control. Not weakness, something older. A man who had learned early that care meant anticipating harm before it arrived and removing choices before fear could complicate them. It was not kindness yet, but it was not cruelty either. It was a survival language no one had translated for him. Tell me next time, I said, even if it is ugly. He nodded. I will. My life outside Seoryeon House did not vanish, though it had to change shape. I still auditioned when I could, though now every casting room recognized me and pretended not to. I still visited Yeri, who had started designing costumes for a small theater production and pretending she was not excited. Her ex-girlfriend had begun sending messages again, careful little apologies folded into questions about fabric shops. Yeri showed me one while eating tteokbokki from a paper bowl. Do you think people can change? She asked. Yes. Do you think they change before or after they ruin your sleep? Usually during. She sighed. Terrible answer. Honest answer. She squinted at me. You are getting calmer. I am in a contract marriage with a mafia CEO, while a jealous socialite sends funeral flowers. Calm is not the word. No, but you look less like you are apologizing for taking up space. I looked at my hands. Tae-oh had arranged security for my visits, but after our fight he told me the schedule beforehand. He never asked what Yeri and I discussed. He only sent a driver who kept enough distance to let me pretend I was free. He listens, I admitted. That is suspicious. Very. Do you like him? I shoved rice cake into my mouth, which was mature and legally non-committal. Yeri pointed her chopsticks at me. That means yes in Omega. There is no such language. There is, and it is mostly avoidance. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say I liked the safety, the clean sheets, the way he remembered my coffee, the fact that he apologized without turning it into theater. But liking actions was safer than liking the man. Actions could be categorized under contract. Men could ruin you. I am careful, I said. Yeri's expression softened. Careful is good. Just do not confuse it with being locked. The first time I saw Tae-oh lose control, nothing broke. That was what made it worse. We were at a foundation dinner, one of those events where everyone wore compassion like jewelry. I stood beside him in a charcoal suit director Na had selected, answering questions with the polite vagueness of a man paid in legal protection. Ryu Seon arrived late because people who want attention often mistake lateness for power. He approached with his mother, a woman whose pearls looked like tiny verdicts, and congratulated us on our unexpected legal experiment. Tae-oh's hand rested lightly at my back, not touching skin, just enough for the room to read unity. "Thank you," he said. "We value your support." "Do you?" Ryu asked. I wondered. Choi I-han has such an interesting history. Small roles, bar work, debt, a sick aunt. It must be inspiring for him to stand here among donors. The words struck exactly where he aimed them. I had survived worse, but survival does not make humiliation painless. Tae-oh's hand stilled. I prepared my smile. Before I could speak, he said, "Your mistake is assuming hardship makes a person smaller." Ryu's smile froze. "I only meant—" "No. You meant to remind this room that my husband worked for what others inherited. Thank you. It makes the distinction useful." The silence around us became dense. Tae-oh's voice remained level, but something in it had sharpened beyond strategy. Seoryun Foundation will be adding a worker arts scholarship under Choi I-han's name. Since you raised the issue publicly, your family may make the first donation. Ryu's mother went pale with rage disguised as manners. I looked at Tae-oh and saw, beneath the controlled posture, the pulse jumping once in his jaw. Not for his reputation. For me. The realization unsettled me so much that I forgot to breathe normally for several seconds, which was inconvenient because I was expected to look dignified while becoming emotionally compromised near the dessert table. That night I found him in the small library at Seoryun House, standing in the dark with his jacket off and his sleeves rolled to the forearms. The room smelled like paper and rain. I had come to thank him and possibly scold him for naming a scholarship after me without asking, because apparently gratitude and irritation had become our marital dialect. But he spoke first. "I should have let you answer." "Yes." He nodded as if accepting a sentence. I was angry. "I noticed. The room noticed. Several ancestors in painted frames probably noticed." "I apologize." "For defending me or for doing it without permission?" He considered. "Both." I leaned against the doorframe. I was going to say something elegant and devastating. "I believe that you robbed the public. A serious offense." His mouth softened, not quite a smile, but an admission that one might exist. The quiet between us changed. I could hear rain against the windows, the old house settling, my own foolish pulse. "Why did it bother you so much?" I asked. "He was attacking me, not you." Tae-oh looked at the bookshelves. "People have used my name to make others feel small since I was a child. I learned not to react because reaction became proof they had found something. With you, silence felt like agreement." The answer was not dramatic. It did not ask to be forgiven. It simply stood there, plain and devastating in the way small truths can be. "I do not need you to fight every room for me," I said. "I know." Do you?" "I am learning." That word touched me more than it should have. Learning. Not mastering, not controlling. Learning. A man like him admitting incompleteness was more intimate than any public display could have been. I looked away first. The contract had rules for public affection. Hand at back, acceptable. Holding hands, acceptable when cameras present. Embracing, limited to arrivals, departures, or moments of public distress. Kissing, not required. Emotional reliance, not listed, which felt like a loophole large enough to ruin us. We became good at the choreography. At events, he offered his arm. In cars, he asked if the temperature was comfortable. At breakfast, he read reports while I marked audition pages. And sometimes he slid a peeled tangerine toward me as though nutrition could be delivered anonymously. When I had nightmares after Ryu's men followed Yeri one evening, Tae-oh did not enter my room. He sat outside in the hallway with his laptop until morning. I found him there at 6, tie loosened, eyes tired, pretending he had simply chosen the floor for strategic reasons. You could have slept, I said. I did. On the hallway floor? Briefly. You are a CEO. Surely you own chairs. The hallway had better visibility. I should have laughed. Instead, I sat beside him, back against the wall, knees drawn up. We watched dawn spread pale light along the polished floor. I was scared, I said, because the hour was too early for pride to wake fully. I know. I hate that. I know. You saying I know makes me want to throw a slipper at you. There are none nearby. Poor planning. He turned his head. Our shoulders were almost touching. I can have some placed here. I laughed then, quietly, and he looked at me with the same careful wonder as the first day. It frightened me, being seen in pieces rather than as a role. It frightened me more that I was beginning to want it. Ryu's final mistake was involving Yeri. He sent her a contract offer through a fake production company, promising funding for her theater costumes if she provided private information about my marriage. Yeri, who had once described betrayal as a garment with ugly seams, invited the fake producer to a cafe, recorded the entire conversation, and called me afterward to say, "Your jealous villain has terrible taste in stationery." Tae-oh moved fast. By evening, Director Na had documents, lawyers, and enough evidence to make Ryu's family withdraw from 3 business negotiations before dinner. I expected Tae-oh to lock me inside Seoryeon House for safety. Instead, he came to my room and knocked. He always knocked. That mattered more than I knew how to admit. "I want to act against Ryu," he said. "It will make the situation public. Your name may appear again." "What kind of act?" "Legal pressure, financial exposure, a statement." "Will it put Yeri at risk?" "No, I will structure it through Seoryeon." "Will you hurt him?" He understood what I meant. His face went still. "Not physically." "Did you consider it?" "Yes." I appreciated that he did not lie. "And?" "You would not like the man I become when I solve problems that way." "Do you like him?" He was quiet for a long moment. "He kept me alive." "That is not what I asked." "No." I stood by the window, looking at his reflection in the glass. "Then do it the way you can live with afterward." His eyes met mine in the reflection. "You think I can choose that?" "I think you already are." That was the turn, though neither of us named it. Not a confession, not a scene fit for violins. Just a dangerous man asking to be held accountable, and an ordinary Omega realizing he had become part of the answer. The public statement was brutal in its elegance. Seoryeon Holdings announced legal action against unnamed parties for coercion, defamation, and attempted bribery of private citizens connected to the Kwon family. The Worker Arts Scholarship was funded with a donation extracted from Ryu's family through negotiations no one described to me, which was wise because I preferred my plausible deniability with breakfast. Ryu left the country for Singapore, allegedly for recovery. His mother resigned from 2 foundation boards. The gossip accounts found a new scandal involving an idol, a yacht, and a tax investigation, and just like that, my face stopped trending. It should have been a relief. It was, mostly, but silence after danger has its own weight. Without Ryu pressing against the contract, Tae-oh and I had to notice what remained. We were still married, still sharing a house, still moving around each other with a tenderness neither of us had authorized. 1 week after the statement, Director Na reminded us of the 6-month review clause. "Both parties may revise the agreement," she said in Tae-oh's office, tablet ready. "Separate residences can be arranged now that the immediate threat has decreased." I looked at the neat contract summary on the screen. Debt cleared. Aunt stable. Yeri safe. Public threat reduced. All the practical reasons for staying had begun loosening their grip, which meant any desire left behind belonged unfortunately to me. Tae-oh said nothing. He gave me the choice first. I hated him a little for that kindness. I would like to keep my room, I said. Director Na nodded. Of course. And breakfast access? Her stylist paused. Breakfast access? The toast situation has improved. Tae-oh looked down at his desk. Director Na's expression remained heroic. Noted, I added, because courage sometimes arrives dressed as nonsense. I am not requesting separate residence at this time. Tae-oh's hand went still on the pen. He did not look at me immediately. When he did, the controlled mask was there, but thinner now, human at the edges. Neither am I, he said. Feelings once noticed became extremely inconvenient. I began to see him everywhere, which was ridiculous because we lived in the same house, and seeing him was not evidence of fate. He stood in the garden speaking quietly with security, and I noticed the way he listened without moving. He sat across from me at breakfast, and I noticed that he had started placing the jam closer to my side. He came home late smelling of winter air and expensive elevators, and I noticed I wanted to ask if he had eaten. Wanting ordinary things with someone dangerous can be more frightening than wanting dramatic ones. Drama can be dismissed as circumstance. Ordinary wanting asks where it may live. I tried to remain sensible. I told myself he was attentive because attention was his skill. I told myself he cared because I was under his protection and responsibility looked intimate when performed well. I told myself many things while drinking coffee he had learned to make exactly too sweet. Then my aunt asked when we had fallen in love. She did it from her hospital bed while peeling a tangerine badly. I nearly choked. We have not. She gave me a look perfected by raising me through adolescence. I may have kidney problems, but my eyes work. He is respectful. So is the pharmacist. You do not look at him like your soup is about to cry. What does that even mean? It means you are happy and terrified. I took the mangled tangerine from her and fixed it. The marriage is complicated. Most real things are. It began as a contract. So did my apartment lease. I still made a home. I hated when elders used simple comparisons to ruin months of careful denial. She patted my hand. Just make sure he knows you are not grateful enough to disappear. He knows. Good. Then make sure you know it too. The intimate scene, if I am honest, began with laundry. This is not what poets would prefer, but poets rarely live in houses where staff collect shirts before you can rescue the one sweater that still feels like yourself. I found Tae-oh in the laundry room at midnight, holding my gray sweater with the focused concern of a man negotiating a hostage release. The staff said it is too worn, he said. The staff is correct. Then why did you come down? Because it is mine. He looked at the frayed cuffs. I told them to wash it gently. Something in my chest turned over, not dramatically, just enough to change the shape of the room. He had come down at midnight to save an ugly sweater because I owned so few things that were simply mine. I took it from him. Our fingers touched. Neither of us moved away quickly enough to pretend. He looked tired. Not the elegant tired of CEOs in magazine interviews, but bone-tired, human-tired, the kind that made his control seem less like armor and more like a habit he could not put down. I-han, he said. My name and his voice had changed over time. At first it had been information. Now it felt like a question. This is not in the contract, I said. No. You are not responsible for my sweater. No. Or my sleep, or my breakfast, or whether I feel small in crowded rooms. No. Then why? He answered with the economy that had always been his most dangerous honesty. Because I want to. The washing machines hummed around us. I looked at him, at this man who had hired me to be a false past and somehow become a present I did not know how to surrender. Wanting is not the same as choosing, I said. I know. Do you? I choose it too. That was all. No speech, no collapse, no miracle. Just the quiet sound of a truth finally taking its shoes off and entering the room. I stepped closer. He waited. He always waited now. When I touched his face, his eyes closed for one brief second, as if restraint had been costing him more than I understood. The kiss, when it came, was gentle and serious, less an answer than a promise to keep asking. We went no further than what the night could hold without breaking. His hands stayed careful at my waist. My forehead rested against his shoulder. Tenderness can be a kind of negotiation, too, but this one did not leave me smaller. It left me present. Morning made cowards of us for approximately 7 minutes. I found Tae-oh at breakfast, looking composed enough to attend a funeral for his own vulnerability. I poured coffee, added too much condensed milk, and said, "Are we going to discuss the laundry room or pretend sweaters are naturally romantic?" He set down his report. "I would prefer to discuss it." "Terrible, mature." "I am in love with you," he said. I spilled coffee on the table. Not a large amount, but enough to ruin the dignity of the moment. Tae-oh reached for a napkin. I grabbed it first because I needed something to do with my hands. "You cannot just say that before toast. You asked to discuss it." I expected a preface. "I can add one." "Too late." He looked almost alarmed, which I would have enjoyed under different circumstances. "I am not asking you to answer immediately." "Good, because my immediate answer is mostly coffee panic." "Understood." I sat down slowly. The room was bright, ordinary, absurd. Outside, a gardener trimmed pine branches. Inside, a mafia CEO had confessed love beside a plate of fish and my ruined coffee. "How long?" I asked. He looked at his hands. "I do not know when it became love. I know when I stopped pretending it was responsibility." "When?" "The hallway. You threatened me with slippers." I laughed once, helplessly. "That was your moment?" "One of them." He met my eyes. "You made the house feel less like a place built to survive attacks and more like somewhere a person could return to." I had no joke ready. Some sentences deserved not to be defended against. "I am scared," I said. "So am I." "You do not look scared." "I have had more practice hiding it." "I do not want to be owned." "I do not want to own you." "I may leave one day." His face tightened, but he nodded. "Then I will not turn love into a lock." That was when I understood that my answer had already been forming in all the small rooms before this one. In toast, in apologies, in hallway floors, in a rescued sweater. "I am not ready to remove the contract," I said, "but I want to rewrite it." His voice lowered. "How?" "No end date decided by fear. No affection staged for cameras unless we both agree. Separate rooms remain because I like having a door, but you may knock." "I already knock." "Continue being intelligent." The almost smile appeared. "Anything else?" I looked at him. "We choose each other in private before we perform anything in public." "Agreed." "And breakfast access remains permanent." "Naturally." Rewriting a marriage is quieter than beginning one. There were lawyers, because of course there were lawyers, but there was also my aunt insisting on meeting Tae-oh properly outside a hospital room, Yeri threatening to design me a divorce outfit just in case he disappointed her, and Director Na looking vaguely betrayed by the number of emotional clauses we added. The new agreement acknowledged the original contract, preserved my financial independence, transferred my aunt's medical support into a trust not controlled by Tae-oh, and stated in painfully formal language that any continuation of the marriage beyond its strategic purpose would be based on mutual personal choice. "This is the least romantic love document I have ever seen," Yeri said. "It has subsections." "Romance without subsections is how people get trapped," I replied. Tae-oh, seated beside me, said, "I agree." Yeri studied him across the conference table. "Do you ever laugh?" "Occasionally." "At what?" He glanced at me. "Your friend." "Correct answer," she said, and signed as witness with aggressive approval. Our public relationship changed slowly. We attended fewer events. When we did attend, Tae-oh no longer used me as proof of anything. I stood beside him because I chose the invitation, not because strategy required my body in the frame. Sometimes reporters asked how we had fallen in love. I always said, badly at first. Tae-oh would add, carefully after. It became a minor quote online. People found it charming. They did not know about funeral lilies, hallway floors, contracts marked in blue ink, or the night he saved a sweater. I liked that. Not every truth needs an audience to become real. Months later, I returned to acting. Not the fake kind for dangerous men at charity previews, though Yeri said that had been my breakout role. I got a recurring part in an audio drama as a stubborn apothecary who refused to marry a prince unless the prince learned basic communication skills. The director said I brought unusual conviction to the role. Tae-oh listened to every episode while pretending to review shipping reports. One evening, I came home to find him in the library, the audio playing softly from his phone, my recorded voice saying, "A cure is not love if it requires a cage." He paused it when I entered, which was absurd because it was my voice. "Research?" I asked. "Support." "That sounded painful for you to admit." I endured it. I sat beside him on the sofa, leaving no careful distance this time. He rested his hand palm up between us, not taking, offering. I placed my hand in his. The house around us was still too large, still guarded, still full of histories I did not entirely understand. The Kwon family remained dangerous. His father remained a storm contained by age and ambition. Director Na still carried 3 phones and the expression of someone preventing disasters before lunch. Nothing had become simple. But peace, I had learned, was not the absence of complicated things. Peace was knowing where your body could rest inside them. My life had begun this strange turn with a role, former lover, edited memory, useful bait. I had been hired to play his ex, so another man's jealousy would expose the truth. Instead, the performance forced all of us to reveal what we were. Ryu revealed possession. Tae-oh revealed responsibility before he knew how to call it care. I revealed to my own surprise that dignity did not require loneliness. The contract that brought me here still existed in a folder, rewritten, witnessed, stripped of its teeth. Sometimes I read it when fear made old arguments in my head. Sometimes I laughed at the clauses. Sometimes I looked at Tae-oh across breakfast, at the jam placed near my hand, and the coffee too sweet by his standards, but exactly right by mine, and thought that love had not rescued me. I did not need rescuing in that simple, insulting way. Love had done something harder. It had stayed outside the locked door, knocked, and waited until I chose to open it.